people will appear. It'll be great. Hi, everyone. Good evening. We're just going to let more folks join the Zoom call, and then we will have a lovely conversation with between Emma Gray and Jessica Goodman. We're so super happy you're here. Okay. Hi, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to tonight's live online author event with Greenlight Bookstore. I'm Jackie Schicker from Greenlight Bookstore, and we're incredibly excited this evening to host Jessica Goodman launching her new book, They Wish They Were Us. It's chilling and thrilling and hard. So good. She will be talking with Emma Gray, so you're in for an excellent time this evening. Before we start, I just want to say a huge thanks to Jessica and the team at Razorbill for making this happen, and to all of you for attending. Though we're not able to host events in our store spaces, our community of authors and readers is still here, and we're incredibly grateful for your support and for the chance to make space for both conversation and connection. Now, just a couple of housekeeping things. In our Zoom webinar tonight, you can see and hear the speakers, but they can't see or hear you. They can't see that you're here though, and you can see a count of fellow attendees down at the bottom of your Zoom screen, where it depends on the device you're using. You're also welcome to post your comments and chats and thoughts down in the chat below. It's a great way to show your appreciation for the author and interact with your fellow attendees. If you have a more specific question you'd like to have answered by the author, please post the question in the Q&A bubble. You'll find it clicking on the bottom of your screen. It looks like 2 speech balloons. We'll be pulling questions only from the Q&A tonight to be answered later on in the program, so you're welcome to populate them, and we'll get back to them later on. We are recording tonight's event, so look out for the video on audio versions on our social media channels. And importantly, tonight's featured book, They Wish They Were Us, is available for sale from us at Greenlight Bookstore. We're super excited to be able to offer shopping in the store from 12 to 6, Tuesday through Saturday. If you want to come get it from then, or you can purchase Jessica's book and many others on greenlightbookstore.com, where you can pick it up, or we can ship to anywhere in the US. We are incredibly fortunate that Jessica, who's local to the neighborhood, was able to sign and stop and buy and sign copies for us. So you can even get a signed copy requested in the order comments when you're shopping online, or ask us when you're in the store. One of the booksellers will make sure to get you a signed copy. If you care about supporting the careers of authors like Jessica Goodman and the ongoing existence of independent bookstores like us, buying tonight's featured book is a great way to show your support. So our interviewer for this evening is the incredible Emma Gray. She's a senior reporter at HuffPost focused on the intersection of gender, culture, and politics, and the author of A Girl's Guide to Joining the Resistance, a primer on young women and activism. She's also the co-host of the Webby Award-nominated podcast, Here to Make Friends. Her work has additionally appeared in Cosmopolitan, Nylon, and Teen Vogue. Emma is based in Brooklyn and is an alum of McGill University in Montreal, which is probably why she has such a soft spot for poutine and San Viator bagels. She'll be speaking this evening with our featured author, Jessica Goodman. Jessica is the op-ed editor at Cosmopolitan. She is also a Greenlight neighbor and lives in the neighborhood. And They Wish They Were Us, her debut novel, is one of the most pre-ordered titles of all time for our store. They Wish They Were Us is a slick, taut murder mystery set against the backdrop of an exclusive prep school on Long Island. Praised by the Herd author Andrea Bartz as a juicy, fast-paced, addictive tale that's more than a mystery, it's a timely exploration of ambition, loyalty, and how far we'll go to belong. Jessica is going to start us off with a reading from the book, and then she'll be speaking with Emma and with all of you. So Jessica, will you please take it away?
Yes, thank you so much, Jackie. That was so wonderful. And I just want to thank everyone so much for coming tonight from your couches and from your homes to hang out with me and Emma and show your support. It's just such a joy to release this book into the world right now. And thank you so much to Emma for chatting with me. This is just the biggest treat. So I'm now going to read the prologue from They Wish They Were Us. It's one of my favorite parts of the book. I started this book, I started writing it in 2011 when I was in college, and it always had a prologue like this. This was like one of the only things that kind of stayed the whole time. Obviously, I hope the writing got better, but the format of it was always there. So I'm just so delighted to read this. It's a miracle anyone gets out of high school alive. Everything is a risk or a well-placed trap. If you're not done in by your own heart, so trampled and swollen, You might fall victim to a totally cliched but equally tragic demise. A drunk driving accident, a red light missed while texting, too many of the wrong kinds of pills. But that's not how Shaila Arnold went. Of course, technically, her cause of death was blunt force trauma at the hands of her boyfriend, Graham Calloway. With trace evidence of seawater in her lungs, drowning may have been the easiest assumption. But upon closer inspection, the bump on her head and the puddle of thick, sticky blood that matted her long, honey blonde hair was unmissable. Blunt force trauma. That's what her death certificate says. That's what went down in the record books. But that's not really how she died. It can't be. I think she died from anger, from betrayal, from wanting too much all at once, from never feeling full. Her rage was all-consuming. I know this because mine is too. Why did we have to suffer? Why were we chosen? How had we lost control? It's hard to remember what we were like before, when anger was just temporary, a passing feeling caused by a fight with mom, or my little brother Jared's insistence on eating the last piece of apple pie at Thanksgiving. Anger was easy then, because it was fleeting, a rolling wave that crashed ashore before things settled down. Things always settle down. Now it's as if a monster lives inside me. She'll be there forever, just waiting to crack open my chest and step forward into the light. I wonder if this is how Shaila felt in her last moments alive. They say only the good die young, but that's just a line in a stupid song we used to sing. It isn't real. It isn't true. I know that because Shaila Arnold was so many things. Brilliant and funny, confident and wild. But honestly, she wasn't all that good. That's the prologue.
Oh, so good, Jess. Oh my gosh. The book really just like pulls you in from the first moment. And I remember feeling such a rush reading your prologue for the first time. Like, oh, I have chills. I have chills right now. I am so excited to be here virtually with you, Jess, and all of the 59 people I can see are here. So I'm just like imagining an adoring crowd cheering for you right now, drinking wine. It's, you know, we're ready.
That sounds fantastic. I wish we were all together, but that's the next best thing.
Yeah, exactly. We can use our imaginations. At least we get to do this. And I'm just so thrilled to get to help you birth your book into the world and introduce it. You know, your book is out in the world. It's been out for 24 hours now, more than 24 hours. Incredible. How has it been going through this whole first-time author process in the midst of a global pandemic?
You know, it's very strange. It's not the way that I thought that I would be releasing my debut novel. But I've been so inspired by a lot of the other authors who had their books come out in like March and April and May, when people had no idea what was really going on, and when so many bookstores around the country were closed and warehouses weren't shipping books. And it was just, I think it was a really tumultuous time for the publishing industry. So I've been really inspired by those authors who've been able to kind of pave the way to like have these really cool digital events and do really fun, interesting activations to make people excited about reading and new books and debut authors. And it's just been, that part of it has been really cool. Obviously I wish that I could like engage with readers face to face and like talk to people. But I feel so lucky, honestly, that I was able to go into two different bookstores yesterday and like visit my book and see what was up. One of them was Greenlight, obviously. So that is just like really special. And I know a lot of other authors can't do that, but you know, obviously there's also so much going on in the world right now. And I hope that my book can be a little sliver of joy and escapism for people who need it.
Yeah, you know, we were talking about this before this all started, that obviously there's a lot of dark themes in this book, but it does feel like such a joyful way to kind of dig into those themes. For people who haven't been lucky enough to devour this book yet, can you kind of give everyone the elevator pitch for They Wish They Were Us?
Yes, this is good because I need some practice on like giving my like 60-second spiel. But basically, so They Wish They Were Us follows Jill Newman, who is a senior at the very exclusive Gold Coast Prep on Long Island. When she was a freshman, her best friend Shaila was murdered, and everyone thinks that Shaila's boyfriend Graham was the one who killed her. But senior year comes around, and Jill starts getting text messages that suggest that Graham, Shaila's boyfriend, was not the person who killed Shaila. And so Jill, who is now a part of this also very exclusive secret society at Gold Coast Prep, it's called the Players. Jill has to decide if she is going to investigate Shaila's murder, find out who really killed her, and in the process, like, take down basically like all of her friends in this super exclusive secret society. So it's really, I think, a story about a young woman finding her agency, finding out the truth about something that she worked so hard to forget and bury and kind of like get rid of this trauma. I think a lot of people know that trauma exists in the body forever. And I think that she kind of deals with this in a belated way, like so many other people do. It's a story about power. It's a story about privilege. And you know, it's set on Long Island, like I said, where I grew up. So I think to me that has been one of the most like exciting and things I didn't really expect to come out of this week is like seeing people like take photos of it on Long Island and like send me, you know, like, oh my God, is this that diner? Or like, is this like about this little town or whatnot? So it's definitely like a kind of love letter to Long Island also, which is a very complicated place. But yeah, that's my long spiel.
I love it. I love it. So that sort of segues really well into my next question. I was going to say, you know, I know as someone who is your friend that you grew up on Long Island. You did attend a private school there. Obviously, these are the general themes in the book. Was there anything specific that inspired the book? Like, where did the seed of this idea come from?
Yeah, I mean, I've always just like been obsessed with thrillers and mysteries, and they're my favorite kind of books to read. And so when I thought about writing a book, it was kind of like what I wanted to write about. That and teenage girls, which like I am endlessly, who I am endlessly fascinated with because I, of course, was one, as were you. And I just think teenage girls have like the richest inner lives of all humans. We're like just constantly thinking and analyzing and discovering. And to me, that's just, there's so much story there. There's so much room to grow and discuss. So I really wanted to write a thriller about a teenage girl, but, you know, my mom always told me like, write what you know, which is like a Nora Ephron quote, obviously. But my mom always said it to me. And I just was like, what do I know? I know Long Island the best. I know these kinds of elite exclusive institutions very well, and I know their downfalls. And to me, you know, so many great stories are set in those places, and I really wanted to write one that was a strong critique of the kind of privilege that comes out of there and how people deal with that privilege and begin to understand the privilege that they come out with from those places and how to better move about the world in a way that's not as harmful as it could be.
I love that. How did you kind of go about coming up with the rules for the Players, which, as you said, is the secret society that this book centers on? I mean, it's a very regimented, complex institution.
I love this question because it was so fun to research like the kinds of secret society rules that exist in other places. Obviously, I took a lot of inspiration from The Skulls, which is a fantastic 90s movie about the Skull and Bones Society at Yale. But, you know, I went to the University of Pennsylvania where there are many secret, just more like societies that, and honestly, none of them were as like crazy, I think, as the Players. But I think that like that kind of the ethos that goes along with being, and one of those is something that I wanted to play with a lot. But honestly, it was just kind of like, what's the weirdest, like darkest thing I can think of? And I would go back and forth with my editor a bunch about stuff where we would be like, is this realistic? Like, would this actually make sense in a high school setting? So it was fun because I think a lot of secret societies exist within college stories. So to write one in high school was very much like, what would high school students actually dare each other to do, or like what would be the thing that pushes them to the edge. And I have to admit, I definitely enlisted some of my high school friends to chat about some of the things that we thought might have existed in like this version of the players that did not exist in our high school, but maybe it could.
But what you're saying is that you weren't in an elite secret society that included murder in high school.
No, definitely not.
Damn, I was hoping that I had missed some very big autobiographical detail.
I just like secretly dropped that right here, and I was like, guess what? Like, I'm gonna like, you know, blow up my whole high school and then say what was there.
I don't know, Jess. Crazy things happen at book events. So one of the big themes that you explore in They Wish They Were Us is the complexity and intensity of female friendship, specifically through the lens of the Jill and Shaila relationship, and then other secondary friendships. Why was female friendship something that you chose to focus on so much? And what do you kind of hope that readers walk away understanding about those type of friendships, especially perhaps like those relationships between teenage girls?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that female friendships and the friendships that I've had with my female friends are some of the richest, deepest, most complicated relationships that I've had. And I think that that's something that women talk about all the time, you know, how you can like fight with your friends like they're your family and be so mad at them and then also like need them in such an intense way. And I think that's only heightened when you're a teenager. It's like you kind of have that feeling of like, do I want to be you or do I want to hang out with you 24/7? Like, do I want to wear your skin or like go with you to the movies? It's like this it's just like really, really intense. And you know, my friendships at that age were so like, just, it was my entire world. You know, if my best friend was mad at me, it was like the whole world was falling apart. And I wanted to write about what it's like to be inside that kind of friendship that is so where you're so codependent. It at a time where you're also trying to figure out like who you actually are and what you believe in, and if that person is like a good influence on you, and if you're making like good decisions, and if you like the person you are when you're hanging out with them. But I think I wanted to write that because I just like believe that so wholeheartedly, and I just feel like teenage girls have so much to say about their friendships, and there's not really like an outlet to say that, you know, like it's also, I don't know, I mean, like you feel that way, right? Like we've talked about it. Yeah, it's just it's so hardcore.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and so often we do see teenage girls' narratives being distrusted or sort of mocked. And I mean, as a reader, I really appreciated sort of the weight that you gave those girls' voices in this book. I think it's really, really special. And to have that as a part of, you know, sort of a crazy thriller is really nice. Something else that They Wish They Were Us does a really great job of exploring is the way that power dynamics intersect with gender inequality, sexual inequality, and even among teenagers. And, you know, during a time when, as you said, people are figuring out what roles they want to inhabit in the world. Was that something that you knew would always be present in the book?
Honestly, that was something that was in the book when I started writing it in like 2011. I think so many of my group friendships, like group dynamics going back to like middle school, were so centered around the male desire. And not, I don't just mean sexually, like the desire, like what's funny, like what movie are we going to see? Like what fast food place are we going to sit at the food court? You know, it's like, it was all those, that was what ruled those groups, you know, like, and I was so frustrated by that at the time, because I was like, why aren't they listening to me and what I want to say? Why aren't me and my girlfriends, like, why don't we have the power here to be like, I don't want to see that movie, like, let's go see what I want to see. Like, it just didn't make any sense to me. And I felt that way all throughout college, I think, and up until like pretty recently, honestly. And I think, I hope a lot of that is changing for like some of the young women who are growing up now. But, you know, I wanted to write a story where that wasn't the case, like where these girls realized that dynamic was pretty messed up and found a way to change it. Because I wish when I was like 16 or 17 that I could have realized that it didn't have to be the truth, you know, like I could have changed that in my own group of friends, but I didn't know how, and I didn't know why. Like I didn't know why I couldn't do that. So I wanted to give my characters the power to do that. And I think Jill does it really well by the end.
She does. And she also grapples with that really well. I think what you said about humor, that really hits home for me, certainly. I can, look back and pinpoint, especially in high school or at summer camp, the ways in which women's opinions or again, women's jokes were even just sort of like silenced almost by default in a way that probably most of us weren't conscious of, but it really does impact the way that you then choose to move about the world later. And I thought that setting this story in a time of great transition, it was a perfect setting to explore that. So
Really.
I absolutely love that aspect of it.
I'm glad you think so. I mean, the humor thing, like, it just destroys me because I feel like we grew up in the time where like women weren't funny.
Oh yeah.
That's like just like an absurd thing to say, and I feel like now everyone like pretends like that wasn't a thing. But that was such a thing when we were growing up.
It was such a thing. Oh my God, it was such a thing. Like, I think I truly believed until like a couple years ago that I just like wasn't funny. And like if someone laughed at something I said, it was like a total fluke.
Well,
It's just, I'm not. But you're very funny, Jess. I know from many experiences that you have a great sense of humor. We digress. You touched on this a little bit before, but privilege, racial privilege, but really specifically financial privilege is something that is really, really present in this story. And I'm curious if you could, expand a little bit on what exactly you wanted to explore there and maybe how your own relationship to financial privilege has changed over time.
totally. I mean, Gold Coast Prep, like the school where they all go to, is like the elite of the elite. Like the 1% of the 1% go to this school. Like think, dignitaries and like Wall Street hotshots and like people who own private planes, basically. Like that's the vibe of Gold Coast Prep. And I think, that kind of privilege is really, really shocking when you see it for the first time. And as you get more used to it, like as you go to people's houses where they have acres and acres and acres of land and, tennis courts and pools and hot tubs and like just so many amenities that like so many people could ever even dream of, you kind of get desensitized to it and you forget that that's not the way that most people live. Until like unless you're the kind of person that like does the research and remember and like is taught that is not how most people live. So the students at Gold Coast Prep, most of them, excluding Jill, are of that mindset where they kind of don't realize how privileged they are, how lucky they are, or where they sit in the greater context of the world. Jill does. Jill is a scholarship student. She is different than most of her classmates in the sense that she is Jewish, which, as many people know, that Long Island is a very Jewish place, but there are some areas where it's not. It's very waspy, and there are still some country clubs where like Jews aren't really allowed in, like let alone other racial minorities. So like I said, Long Island is a very complicated place, but so I wanted to set this story there because I wanted these characters to to go on a journey to kind of realize like their life is not normal, and there are things out there that they should be exposed to in order to like just be a normal human who like walks around the world not harming people. So I think that was something that I felt really strongly about growing up and going to a private school and kind of like seeing the kind of wealth that people had that I had not been previously exposed to. And going to college and seeing that as well, and just being so confused by the fact that some people didn't understand that wasn't the norm. And I, of course, like have so much wonderful privilege of being like a part of these institutions, but I think with that privilege also comes great responsibility of like highlighting some of the like downfalls and downsides that come with like not exploring the other, like the not talked about sides.
And I think there's a real theme in the book sort of characters wanting to ignore things in the world that might feel a little unsavory or might feel a little uncomfortable or might challenge their worldviews. Do you feel like most of the characters kind of go on a journey where they end up having to confront those things that they had previously tried to ignore?
I think so. I think they kind of like make each other confront them and like throw things in each other's faces in a way. Like this group is very tight knit, you know, there's like Jill and there's Shaila, who obviously died when she was a freshman, but then Jill has this boyfriend, Henry, who is like in love with her, and he thinks she's like the greatest person in the world. And like Jill is kind of unsure about the whole thing. So if you're into like some romance stuff, there is romance in this book too. But so Jill and Henry kind of go on that journey too, and they're both forced to confront things about their own relationship and about just like relationships in high school in general and like what they mean. And I think Jill's best friend Nikki is like a really good example of this. Like, so after Shaila died, Jill and Nikki kind of form this extremely close friendship. They have that like real best friend bond. And senior year, Nikki becomes class president. She becomes Toastmaster of the players, which basically means she's like head of the players, and she kind of like runs all the initiations and the hazing rituals and stuff like that. And she goes on this journey where she is just like drunk with power, basically. Like she kind of forgets like her values in some ways while she is leading the group. And I think she is really confronted with the ramifications of that and what that means for her and the rest of the players and the future of the players. So I think Jill is kind of like the instigator in all this, where she is like taking people down a notch when she should. But also, you know, she goes on her own whole like journey of figuring out what she's up to.
So to switch gears a little bit, we have to talk about the news that was recently made public that your book is being adapted into a TV show. Please tell everyone a bit more about that. It's so exciting.
It's so exciting. The fantastic actress Sydney Sweeney, who you may know from Euphoria or The Handmaid's Tale, she has signed on to produce and star in the TV version of They Wish They Were Us. They're calling it The Players Table, which if you are an OG Jessica Goodman fan, shout out mom, you will remember that The Players Table was the original title of this book. So that's very exciting. But yeah, so Sydney has signed on to play Jill, which is just like the greatest. And she's going to be fantastic. And she's going to produce alongside Jean-Marc Vallée and Nathan Ross, who they made Big Little Lies and the movie Wild. So it's just like incredible. And Annabella Tonzio, who is this incredible indie filmmaker. She did this great movie, Mickey and the Bear. She's going to write and direct it. So it's kind of like this all-star powerhouse team. And I'm just like along for the ride, like so excited about it. And it's going to be great. And I hope we have more news to share soon. So yeah, we're all just really excited about it.
To be clear, you are also a star, so don't downplay it. What advice would you give other writers, other aspiring novelists, specifically perhaps young women?
Totally. I mean, the best advice I ever got was from my writing professor in college, Melissa Jensen. She always just said, finish the novel. Like, you're never going to publish your novel unless you finish it. And it's the hardest thing to do, to like sit down and write every day, especially when like you have no, like assurance that it's actually going to get out into the world. So it really all is just like coming from inside of you. So I think like getting that in your head, like just finishing is so important. But for me, when I was stuck in that limbo phase of like, am I going to finish it? Am I going to actually keep writing? Is this just like a kind of weird hobby that's like taking up time where I could be hanging out with friends? I would send a couple pages, send a couple chapters to a few friends who I know were like voracious readers, like Case Wickman, who I think is here, and my friend Isabella. They are people who I sent like very early pages to. And once they were just like, oh yeah, like this is good, like you should keep going, I was like, oh, okay, well, like they said it was good, so like I'll, that gives me like another, little ammo for a couple days, couple months actually. But I think that's just really important. And then also like finding people whose, you know, perspectives and ideas that you like really relate with helps too. Like once I actually got like really going into the book, I sent it to a bunch of friends to read like multiple times, and just like they were the best. So thank you to those people. You know who you are. It's just great.
So what is next? Book number 2. Tell the people about it.
Book number 2. Book number 2 is due to my editor on Friday, so we are having a week over here, but it's very exciting. It is another standalone thriller released with Razorbill, which I'm so excited about. I love working with my editor Jess. I'm really excited about it. So it's another standalone thriller, and I can't say that much, but it does star 2 sisters on a dark and winding journey where they look out for each other above all else. But title TBD, cover TBD, release date TBD, summer 2021, all of that stuff should be really exciting.
You truly love to see it. So I think it's time for us to head over for some audience questions. Let's see what the people want to know.
What do the people know?
Let's see. Okay, what changes did you make to the manuscript that made it into the final book that surprised you or that you never would have thought would have been in there when you began the book in 2011?
Oh my God, great question. I think the biggest change is that as soon as my editor and I, shout out Jess, as soon as we started working together, we changed the original ending, like completely. And I'm not going to share what that ending was right now because I don't want to ruin the book, but yeah, that was like one of the biggest things that we changed from the initial draft that she first read. And this ending is so much better, so much stronger. So I hope readers like it. But obviously there were so many like additional characters that we ended up cutting. Names were different. Places were like, you know, specific like scenes and settings and stuff were different. So much. Like crazy. And we kept changing stuff until the very end, which I think is just how writing and publishing goes. Wow.
Man, now I desperately want to know what the alternate ending was. I'm going to get it out of you one day. What are some of your writing quirks and rituals?
Spend like an hour on Twitter every day. No, I'm just kidding. That's the worst. My writing schedule is that I wake up at like, I try to wake up early, like 6:45, and I try to start writing by 7, and then write till like 9ish until I start my day job at Cosmopolitan. But that's really hard, especially now when like everything is very like confusing and kind of like nutty in the world. So that's like what I say I do. Some days are better than others, but I will say these days I like have a blanket over me like a grandma while I write, and that has really been like doing the comfort trick, I would say.
I mean, we could all use a little more coziness right now, so
I like invest in a weighted blanket if it gets real rough over here, but
I highly recommend it. Weighted blankets are fantastic for anxiety disorders. Next question from Maddie. I was so struck by the sense of empathy and compassion you showed to the characters in They Wish They Were Us, even to certain ones who could have otherwise been clear villains. Would love to hear more about your approach to character development. Great question.
Great question. Thank you, Maddie. I think when I'm writing, I kind of like fall in love with all of my characters, even if they are like villains. So I think that it's really hard for me to write a character that I can't relate to at all, you know, where there's like nothing there that I can like kind of pull from and create like a real person. So I think that that's kind of where I come from it, like where I come to it. I'm always looking to infuse like real human observations and characteristics into my characters, even though none of them are based on like real people wholly. But I think they all have like little traits that I, you know, have either seen from people I know or witnessed like in, you know, on the street or whatever. But I think that that's like really what makes them feel like, well, I hope is what makes them feel like real people and not just like, you know, cardboard cutouts or whatnot. So that's kind of where I come to it from.
No, I love that. I think that's really helpful. Next question. Would you go to prep school if you had to do it all over again?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I don't know. I think I'd have to really think about that one. And it totally depends on the school. A lot of prep schools are really great. I loved my high school.
Next question. Hi, Jess. Can you tell us, mere mortals, how you managed to stay motivated and inspired to write an entire novel while also having a very busy full-time job?
Oh my gosh, it's really hard. I'm not going to pretend it's like all, roses. It's very hard. I think a lot of it is having people in your life who really understand. There's so many times where I was just like, I can't go to this social engagement. Like, I can't go out tonight. I can't go to your birthday party. Like, I have to write in the morning, or I have to write tonight. And that's really hard. So it's not, it's like not, it's not that sustainable also. So I really try to take advantage of the moments in my life where I don't have to do both, like when I'm in between deadlines, or when I am, like after I turn something in, I always try to like take a few days off, or take a week off here and there. But I will say, like, my job is very accommodating to this kind of stuff. They're very excited about the book, which is great. And I think it's like important to just kind of level with like everyone in your life and be like, hey, this week I'm releasing a book, so I might be like a little like scatterbrained on the days that I'm working, but thank you so much for understanding, and I promise next week I will be like 100% there.
Lucy would like to know, when you were writing for your teenage audience, did you feel the weight of your influence? Were you conscious of who would be reading your book and how they would view the choices of your teen characters?
That is such a great question, Lucy. Yes, the short answer is yes. I think when you're writing anything for teenagers or children, you have to be so cognizant of like what they're going to take in, and kind of like what you're telling them is okay and not okay, because you never know who is going to like take your word as Bible. I just think it's very different, I think, than writing for adults, even though I haven't written a book for adults. But it's something that's talked about a lot in the YA community. I think like what your responsibility is to the readers. And you don't want to do any harm. You don't want to write anything that could be harmful or detrimental to a teen's growth. So yeah, I think it's something that like I'm definitely really cognizant of it in my second book. It was interesting because when I was drafting my first book, like when you're writing your first book, you're kind of just like alone in a room, and you don't really think about the reader at all until you sell it and start talking to like people like, the marketers and the salespeople and the publisher and the publicist, and then you're like, oh right, this is going out into the world where people will read it, and like engage with it in a way that you don't think about when you're just kind of like in your bedroom. So that's definitely something I'm now really thinking about for my second book, and I think that kind of came into play a lot when we were revising the first book a lot. It's important. It's important. I still remember all of the books that I read as a teen that were so impactful. And I've reread some of them now, and it's like, they're very funny to kind of be like, oh, I think that's like a little problematic. But I mean, like, what do you think? Like, are there some books that you remember from your teens that left like real impressions on you about like how the world worked?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like, so many. I remember there was like always a great feeling of feeling like you had like figured something out that the author was trying to say. I think the good thing about writing for a teen audience is that teenagers are actually really, really smart, and they will engage with your work in ways that they will take it in, but also critique it and filter it through their own lenses. So your readers are like taking your book in good hands.
I know. I mean, teens are the best fan base, I think. I think like Harry Styles said this actually, where he was like, they'll let you know immediately what they think. And that's like one of the greatest gifts, is to have someone engage with your work and respond to it in such a passionate way that they want to talk to you about it and tell you what they think. So that I'm really excited about that aspect of this. But yeah, I mean, I think teens are brilliant and they like are able to suss out the BS, So I think that's something that you can also like really think about when you're writing YA, and be like, are they gonna know I'm like not 16? Like is the jig up, you know? The answer is yes, they're gonna find out. But it's fun to think about that.
I think it's okay. Azine would like to know what you are most excited about in terms of having your book turned into a TV show.
I'm so excited to see Sydney play Jill. I think she's just like one of the most dynamic young actresses out there, and she has been like so passionate about this project and supportive of it since day one. So I just know that she's going to bring like that kind of fervor to the whole show and the whole series. And this is like she's launching her production company with They Wish They Were Us. So this is just like she's just going to make so much magic, and I'm just so excited to work with her. Be great.
So cool. Laura wants to know, Jess, you've spent 10 plus years writing this book, and it includes so many intricate themes. How did your understanding of privilege over the past decade evolve and contribute to how the book developed?
Great question. I think it evolved tremendously. Like, I think I'm continuing to evolve in terms of recognizing my own privilege and understanding with it and engaging with it in the world. And I think a lot of people are continuing to think about that. I think I started this book when I was like 21, I probably like barely had an understanding of what that meant. You know, going to like an elite private high school and an elite private university. You know, it's not something that I was actively taught or like in those institutions or that was actively discussed like socially. And I'm so grateful for the conversations that have taken place like in the past, I don't know, like 10 years of my life, like as a professional, as a working journalist. I think that's where a lot of that has come in, and kind of like understanding people who are not like me, obviously, and working, you know, to you know, understand my own experience within the context of the greater world. It's very humbling and just makes me kind of want to like, you know, be better, which is like what everyone says, but it's true. It's like, you know, I think so many people over the past few months specifically, but over the past, you know, lifetimes are continuing to evolve and change and grow. And, you know, hopefully we can all just be like the best versions of ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And Anna would like to know if you always have had the aspiration to write a novel. Like, was this something you knew you wanted to do since you were little?
Yes, like 100%. My mom recently sent me a piece of paper from second grade that was like, I want to write novels. It's on my Instagram if you're interested in seeing it. But yeah, I just like from always, I just always wanted to write. So, you know, I feel so lucky that I've been able to do that as a journalist and now as an author. It's just the greatest privilege and joy.
Stephen or Stefan, I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name. When writing suspense, is it hard to keep yourself guessing? How do you stay aware of keeping your audience guessing when you yourself know all the twists? I love this question.
Oh my God, it's so hard. It's so hard. I think that's where like reading buddies come in to kind of be like, oh wait, that's like totally, you can just like know exactly what's going to happen from page one, or like, oh, that was such a surprise. I think reading buddies really help. Sometimes I take like a week away from the work and then come back and I'm like, oh, that is surprising, which is helpful. But, you know, in the first drafts of both of my books, this one, They Wish They Were Us, and my second book, which is coming out next year, I had no idea who was going to be like the big bad at the end. You know, like it kind of just like happened while I was writing it. And I kind of let the characters figure out like what was going to happen and where they were going to go. And then while revising it, would kind of like work with Jess, my editor, to make the pacing work and make it like suspenseful and leaving breadcrumbs for readers. So for me, at least, I kind of work, once I figure out like who the big bad is and like what's going to happen, I kind of like work backwards, I think. And I think I'm like realizing what my writing process is while I'm talking, but it's like I kind of work backwards and like make sure that I'm leaving like a few breadcrumbs. So if you went back to look for clues, you could find them, but it's not like too obvious from page one. And I think a lot of that is kind of like math almost, you know, where you're like, oh, is this like, you know, or do I have like 3 breadcrumbs in the first act, or like, you know, less than 6 in the total? Those are just made up numbers, but I think that might be it.
Oh, that's so interesting. Davy would like to know, she first of all, she says congrats, and then asks, I'm always so curious about how fiction writers do what they do. How do you create a full and complete world from scratch? Were you paranoid that your story had holes in them? What were your strategies for stretching your imagination to the point of imagining full lives and full worlds?
Great question. Yes, I'm like terrified that there are holes everywhere, like plot holes, character holes, like everything. If you find one, please don't tell me. But you know, I think it's like, I think it's, for me, it's a form of escape, you know, of kind of like diving into a different world than my own, and living inside these characters' heads is such a joy. Like when you get to that place where you like almost start dreaming as them, it's just this kind of like magical thing. But I think a lot of it comes, like I said before, from kind of like observation, and from like pulling the most interesting and the most cinematic pieces of the world that is interesting to you, and like compiling that into like a whole story. But for me, I think when I first start writing, or like when I first get an idea for a story, it's more about the setting for me, actually. Like, where would I most want to set a story? So for this one, it was obviously like a Long Island prep school. For my second one, like I was thinking about, you know, where I wanted to spend some time, and like what the towns would be like where I was, in my head. And I'm trying not to spoil it, but for me, that's like where would I most want to live, you know, in my head. And then I think once I come up with that, it's like, well, okay, obviously we're going to write about a teenage girl. So like, where, you know, what does she want? What is she trying to get, and how, what is in her way? And I think that's where I start. But it's hard, and it takes a long time, and it's not like, you know, some people are like, it just came to me in a dream. Like, that's not how I write. It's very hard work. That takes a lot of time and planning and effort. It's hard.
So we got 2 questions that are sort of on a similar theme from Case and Caitlin, asking kind of, are you constantly coming up with ideas for new novels? And like, if you have a bunch of ideas for different stories, do you kind of keep a running list of plot ideas, or do you do like one by one?
Great question. I when I come up with, I would say that like I'm not the kind of person that's like, oh my God, an idea. Like, that could be a whole thing. But I do have like a running note in my phone where I write like little snippets of things that could be cool. So like right now I do have an idea for a 3rd book that I've been like secretly outlining and working on. Well, not so secretly, but I've been like outlining it and working on it a little bit. And I kind of have to like force myself to not work on that and like finish the 2nd book, because that's actually due. But you know, it's fun. It's like, now that this book is out, which is so exciting, it's kind of like, what next? Like, where can I go? And I hope that I hope that I get to do this for a long time, and that I get to continue to tell stories. But you know, I just hope I get to keep doing this, and I know that there are more stories out there to tell. So it'll be great.
Absolutely. And I think a great place to end would be, who are the people that you looked up to most when you first started writing?
Oh, well, you, obviously, Emma. You were like my first friend who published a book, and everybody should go buy Emma's book. It's great. And I think it was just so exciting to kind of watch you go through that process and be like, what was it like to be edited by like a real editor at a publishing house? And like, what was it like to see it in the world? I think that was just like so cool. But in terms of like fiction, I just so look up to Jessica Knoll, who is a fantastic thriller writer. Luckiest Girl Alive is like one of those books that really just like stays with me. And I so look up to her. She's another former Cosmo editor. So I think learning about her career and seeing that there was someone out there who was able to be a magazine editor and then like publish a novel, I was like, oh, this is possible. That's very cool. And the same goes for Gillian Flynn, who, you know, obviously wrote Gone Girl and is like one of the great thriller geniuses of our time. You know, she was also a writer, editor at Entertainment Weekly, where I worked once upon a time. And I think learning that like that was also her path was just so exciting. But there's so many incredible thriller writers in the YA community right now too. Like obviously Karen McManus is incredible. Tiffany Jackson is another one who I just look up to so much. She has a new book out in September called Grown, and it's inspired by the allegations against R. Kelly. It's incredibly powerful. So yeah, I mean, it's just like an incredible time for thriller writers right now. Like obviously Andy Bartz is incredible, and Megan Miranda and Kara Thomas in the YA space. So yeah, I just feel like very humbled and grateful that like my book gets to live on the shelves next to theirs. It's very surreal.
Well, this is great. I think we all have a new, very full reading list now. So thank you, Jess. And yeah, I think that's a great place for us to wrap up. Everyone, please remember to purchase Jessica's book, They Wish They Were Us. And like, look, you're not even in a bookstore. You don't have to carry it home on the subway. You don't stop at one book. Order 5, order 10, fill your house with them. They're very pretty. So buy all the books.
Books are the best. We love books.
Definitely do add like dozens and dozens of books to your orders. The link is in the chat. It was so wonderful to hear both from Emma and Jessica this evening. Jessica, congratulations on your debut. How awesome that we already get to be excited about the next one. That's always the best thing in the world, when you don't have to be like, please don't wait a decade. Please don't wait a decade. Like, we know there was one coming. We're so happy. It's been a delight to have a conversation, to get to listen to both of you. Thank you so much. Like I said, the link both for Emma's books and Jess's books are in the chat, and we look forward to seeing you in person soon, and we are so grateful to be here this evening to celebrate with you this way. So thanks everyone, and good night.
Thank you.